it's hard to, put a number on it, but whenever something films in an area, morale and excitement
Yeah.
seems to go up dramatically. And then people talk about that for
Yeah.
years on end,
Well,
right?
it's exciting.
Yeah.
Who doesn't want to see say you're in Northfield and, a film comes in for a few weeks and, you have actors going into the local bakery and the coffee shop and a level of morale does grow because, I mean, we all understand that, filmmaking and TV series and movies are such a part of the cultural zeitgeist and what gives people sometimes meaning and helps them through difficult times and everything. So when a film is shooting in an area, whether it's a big city or a small town, I think morale is always kind of up a little bit because it's exciting.
Yeah, and then there's opportunities for people to be extras
Yeah.
or stand-ins, or even up north, there's a whole training thing going on to teach
Yeah.
people how to be crew members, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think there's all these extra benefits, right, that
Mm-hmm.
don't really go in the calculation, but do mean a lot to the actual residents.
Yeah, and I think it's important too for people to see the various jobs that are being filled with, this industry. That, if you're a person that, really has no just whether because you have never really cared to know what goes into making a film and you just sit back and enjoy them as entertainment or for the art form. If you see a production come into your area and you see all the different kinds of jobs that are done, it can help get people to kind of find themselves in that industry working as a production manager or start as a PA and move up to a coordinator, then a manager in the whole arts department. And then you have, gaffers working lighting, electricians. All those things can kind of like get people thinking like, wow, this might be an industry that I could see myself working in. Not so much on the director level, but maybe on a mid level where I can make a good living and work hard, and obviously hopefully meet some cool people along the way.
Hey, I'm Matt Osterman, and welcome to Propellant Minnesota, where we talk to creatives, creators, and entrepreneurs making a difference in the state. I've directed 4 feature films, had a hand in a few others, and I'm currently running 2 different companies, so I know a thing or two about rolling that proverbial boulder up the hill, sometimes over and over and over again. Today's guest knows a thing or two about an uphill climb. I'm speaking with Jade Orth, Director of Operations at the Minnesota Film and Television Board, a nonprofit dedicated to advancing the economic and cultural impact of films and TV in Minnesota. Their existence has been punctuated by small wins and near deaths, but they've recently scored a huge victory in helping secure a $25 million film production tax credit that will undoubtedly bring more large-scale productions to the state, and hopefully a larger middle class of artists, filmmakers, craftspeople, and the support structure usually reserved for larger film hubs. Please enjoy my conversation with Jade Orth. We're going to start off with a fun question.
Sure.
If a filmmaker, producer came to you and said, we want to film the quintessential Minnesota scene, where would it be, what would be in it, and what would it be about?
Oh boy. Well,
and it can
that's
be
kind of a
it can be
loaded
cliche.
question.
It can be totally cliche too.
Okay. So I would want something that celebrates the diversity of the state first. I would want it to not be cookie cutter snow Fargo-esque. I'd want something that was all encompassing. So probably starting off with a scene in, say, the global market area of Minneapolis and showing the diversity of the state. And maybe doing something where it's a fun comedy, nothing dark, maybe an immigrant's experience of navigating winter in Minnesota. I think that could be really fun.
That's a great answer. And yeah, I can tell you are good at what you do for a living. I would have said like hot dish and hockey or something stupid obvious, but no, that was way better and well practiced. So yeah, good job.
Thank you.
Speaking of well practiced, can you tell us a little bit about kind of your backstory and how you came to your role at the board?
Yeah, so like a lot of people in at least the film industry, kind of a winding path that brought me here. I spent some time in South America as a 27-year-old young man. And through that experience, particularly in Argentina and Buenos Aires, I kind of became close with some film people down there. They ran a small production company called San Telmo Films. I was fortunate enough to be down there during the 2014 World Cup. So there had to be, a lot of social interactions with lots of people from all over the world. And through that, I learned a little bit about the nuts and bolts of the industry as far as permitting, locations, unions, things like that, workers' rights, all sorts of stuff. And when I got back from Argentina, through a very close family friend, kind of a Minnesota staple in the film industry, Craig Rice, said to me, why don't you look at the Minnesota Film and TV Board as a possible internship? So I went in there, interviewed, got a internship where I assisted with locations and learned a little bit. And before I knew it, I became the business manager without much of a background in business. Like a lot of people who get, like a liberal arts degree, you kind of find your footing somewhere.
Totally.
And I was always been a cinephile, always. But also my mind really works well with trying to figure out how things work, the mechanics of stuff. And so I loved the opportunity right away because I figured I could learn about the landscape of filming in Minnesota and learn about how this kind of juggernaut of industry works in a very small market, thus far at least. And that was 9 years ago. I became director of operations in 2017, I believe, which was a great kind of stepping stone for me to learn a lot about nonprofit management, along with becoming more face-to-face with the film industry. And beforehand, it was much more on the back end. Now I work much closer with the local community, which I love. So,
do you think there's a lesson in there for somebody that's coming into maybe an industry that doesn't have that requisite background? Like if you show up, do the job, you come in with good intentions, you can still succeed? Do you feel like that was kind of like how...
Yeah, I think that the whole idea of having no expectations is often the best route, because as life's crazy. I mean, things can change on a whim that you don't plan, but often a lot of it is not the cliche of following your heart. I'd say it's more so, when you kind of meet people that give you motivation, that are like, okay, I like what this person has done with their life. I like what they're doing work-wise, kind of navigating that. And of course, trusting your own intuition. I was fortunate enough to have people close to me that love this industry, and grew up with it, grew up with, going to see movies all the time. And always, what I used to do is every Friday morning when I was in school, I'd get to school early to read Roger Ebert's reviews of every film that he did. And so I also had that passion, but not obviously understanding where I could bring it. And, this is obviously a very obscure route. I work for a nonprofit film commission, but I still get scratch that itch of being around these insanely creative, talented people who happen to also be very humble. And I appreciate that.
Yeah. And you get a paycheck.
And I get paid. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah. Paycheck's good.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the people in the film industry working day to day are a little sadomasochistic, right? Like it's a tough industry.
Yeah.
And you get to kind of see the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows, and you get to feel those acutely and deeply too, because you guys are trying to move mountains, right?
Yeah.
But I think going further with that, for the people that aren't in the industry or don't know what the Minnesota Film and TV Board is about, can you kind of tell us like the quick elevator pitch?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So essentially, just about every state in the country has a film commission, and they're all over the world, in pretty much every continent that is on our planet. Minnesota Film and TV, one of the unique things is we're a nonprofit film commission, whereas every other commission out there is essentially a state-ran office. But it doesn't mean that we, aren't the same, and we provide, the same services. So a film commission's job is to, one, help facilitate the industry while it's here, work with producers and filmmakers on finding the locations that they need, finding the crew that they need, kind of, navigating the permitting process in different jurisdictions, working with municipalities that need, the right kind of paperwork done in order to allow filming. So handling it the right way. But the big one is obviously administering a state incentive program, which is, the main, mission of a film commission is to establish these incentive programs, because it's the way at least the financial wing of the industry works nowadays. So you administer an incentive to both, grow the industry locally and internally, but then bring in external dollars to stimulate the economy. So, some film commissions are located within government tourism sectors, whereas others are in economic development. We're a nonprofit, but we receive a grant from the state that it's administered through deed to do all the things that a film commission should do.
And when you don't have much of a incentive,
Mm-hmm.
as Minnesota really hasn't previously,
Yeah.
That changes the job quite a bit, right? So can you tell us, and we'll get into the current incentive and what that's going to do, but can you kind of tell us more of what your job was before this latest incentive passed and kind of what it's looking like moving forward?
Yeah. So, prior to the recently passed legislation, a lot of the work that we did was very much the same, working to market the state to other, large studios that are outside of everything. Obviously, the issue was the incentive was underfunded. Our day-to-day or, week to week is all based on pushing that message forward, and then working through our staples of building locations, getting people in our online production directory to show that Minnesota has a very talented workforce that's experienced and hardworking, marketing that to production companies and things of that nature. And then, working on getting legislation passed to really create an industry that all of us here want and really believe has been long overdue.
So two-part question. Tell us why having a larger incentive is important for these bigger entities to come in.
Yeah.
And then part two, tell us about this new incentive and, what it means, like the dollar values, how filmmakers can utilize it to their advantage.
Sure. I can speak briefly on the incentive. I'm not the mastermind behind it. Jill Johansson and my boss, Melody Behan, are the ones that really work within that realm of the industry.
And shout out to Jill and Melody for doing the Lord's work.
We love them. Yep. The incentive obviously is there mainly to stay competitive. If we look at, the way that industry filmmaking incentives are being bumped up nationally, globally, in order for Minnesota to have an industry here, you have to have an incentive. And you have to have a competitive incentive. So
why?
Well, because every studio is going to, or even independent filmmaker is going to try to find a way to work within a budget that can draw, good actors, named actors, good crew, things of that nature. And if you don't have an incentive, you're not going to, first off, have a big enough industry here locally that can work on these bigger projects, but you're not going to draw the big dollars into the state. If you're an economic development program, you want to see the greatest economic impact. So when we're looking at states that obviously have really incentivized this industry, Georgia, New Mexico, obviously now New Jersey now, California, New York always have been, players in this. This has been something years in the making, where studios are then built and infrastructure is created kind of around the incentive. But you have to have that incentive first, because the first thing that a producer from bigger studio is going to do if they get a script that looks good, they're going to say, okay, can I shoot this in Georgia? Can I shoot this in Canada? That's one of our biggest, obviously, competitors, is dealing with Ontario or Manitoba, where they have a 33%, I believe, tax credit program, obviously with a dollar value that goes a little bit further. So in order for us to compete, we have to stay level, at least close enough.
And important to recognize that Minnesota used to be the state, right? Back in the 90s,
yeah.
where, you know, we had all these big studio pictures filming here, and then through some politics and then Canada enacting their large incentive, kind of everything moved north.
Yeah, it did. And, you know, Canada is fortunate to have a population of 35 million and a government that isn't as divided as far as where their funding goes. So, and obviously an extremely talented creative base. So there are a lot. I mean, if you look at, you know, Vancouver, and especially along that, you know, Western corridor, I believe more TV shows are shot in British Columbia than almost anywhere in the world now. And they have this great creative and hardworking blue collar class kind of melding together to create this economic driver, this engine that works.
I know numerous actors that bought second homes in Vancouver just because they were there 6-9 months out of the year filming TV shows.
Yeah, which is crazy because it's like the most expensive place for real estate in the world.
Well, but when you're on a network TV show, you can afford that.
I suppose, yeah, that's nice.
Yeah. Do we know any specifics about the grant, like $25 million, no sunset?
So it's a $25 million transferable tax credit. That's one of the keys. That we've moved the sunset part out of it, which is very nice. And it's a work in progress program. I think that we have a great foundation. There's going to be some, you know, as we move forward, some tweaks being done, but, you know, it's the first time that our government has gone in just all in on it. And so, you know, it was passed as of July 1st of this year. Obviously, the strikes have impacted filmmaking everywhere in the States. So, you know, right now we're still going through a lot of the contractual things that are needed in order to get a government program working. And then from there, you know, we're, you know, very confident that we'll see the industry come here in a much bigger way.
Yeah, in a weird way, maybe the strikes have been helpful to let the powers that be kind of sort out the paperwork before they can really go.
Yeah, I you know, anecdotally, you know, maybe
helpful is not the right word, but you know, gave you time and space, took the pressure off a little bit.
Yeah, it took the pressure off a little bit. I think that you know, we, you know, collectively between you and I and almost everyone in the community in Minnesota, have been waiting for this for an extremely long time, a very long time. So, you know, where we are right now is we're in a good place.
Yeah. All right. So I know you don't deal a lot with like the grant paperwork and all that, but as director of operations, what does your day-to-day look like?
So I run all the financials of the organization. I run all of our programs. So I run our locations directory, our online production directory. I work on our website. I have the office line hooked up to my home, so I'm the one who answers the phones. So technically, Minnesota Film and TV's office is my living room.
So if you want to call Jade, just go to the website.
Yeah. And, you know, unfortunately, I'll get the phone ringing at, you know, 12:01 sometimes at night, to the dire of my wife.
I know who to prank now. You shouldn't have said that.
I run basically all the main ops contract that we have with the state, and reaching out to locations, reaching out for people to be in our directory, hotels, restaurants, bars, you know, historic sites, all things like that. And then run, you know, we don't have an HR team, but I run everything kind of admin that needs to be done with the organization. Which is crucially important, right? Like kind of an unsung hero behind the scenes. Yeah. The title's always kind of, you know, I don't know if it's obtuse or obtuse. I don't know. I'm a director of operations. What does that mean? I do what needs to be done. I guess. Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit, coming back to the incentives? Talk about some of the heroes that may have really pushed that thing forward, whether that be at the film board itself or any of the politicians. Anybody that stands out to you that?
Yeah. I mean, the first person that stands out to me is obviously my boss. Melody Behan has been, understood right away from the minute she stepped into this role that a tax credit was needed in order to stay competitive, and has worked diligently on getting that passed, meeting with, the right politicians, with the right community leaders, and doing a wonderful job of communicating why this is so important. So between her, obviously, David Lisselgard has been a kind of a bulldog in there. Has had a great story, obviously.
Do you want to give his quick story? I know it, but
I essentially, he worked as an extra on North Country when it was shot up on the range.
He's an Iron Ranger.
Iron
right?
Ranger, yeah, and I think he took some theater courses at time, and he was kind of like, I'm not going to be a part of this whole film stuff. And then he was hired on, and he saw, right away the kind of economic impact that was made in a region that was suffering at the time. And, it helped him immensely. And having his story and his vision has been absolutely critical in order to get this thing passed. But then, Melissa Hortman has been pretty big. A very bipartisan, push, which has been awesome. You see people from both sides of the aisle understand how great of an opportunity this is to grow the economy of the state, and also help, show off what makes the state so unique, both culturally, geographically. It's been a kind of a very difficult thing to pass, but over the years it's became more and more of a, I'd say, hopeful endeavor, because you see there's not a lot of pushback at this point, at least.
And we have a kind of a thriving indie scene here too.
Mm-hmm.
If we can talk about that a little bit. I don't know how much interaction you have with the indie scene, but do you have any feelings or thoughts on kind of where that current climate or culture is, and where we've been, where we might be going?
Yeah, I as just a lover of film in general, I find myself gravitating towards indie films more often. Unfortunately, I'm unable to meet a lot of people in the local indie scene here, just by the nature of my job. But I have, I'm close with Dave Ash, who's been doing his Incompleteness series. Yep. and things like that. I know that obviously, like Wes Bone and those guys running the Mixer are trying to get a lot of things going, which is great. One thing that I do believe, though, as far as the indie scene here, is that, specifically in between Minneapolis and St. Paul, and I can speak for that, is that we have people that are exemplary at collaborating. That it's not so much, I mean, there's competition, but there's also, most people are extremely, willing to work together, and that's fun to see. So that's all I can say about it.
Yeah. Have you? I don't know if you guys keep track of numbers or anything, but anecdotally, it seems like there's been an uptick of activity going on, kind of up in Duluth, the North Shore area. Have you kind of found that to be true? At least in terms of conversation, there seems.
Yeah, they have a number of new incentive programs that have in the last year and a half, 2 years, that have popped up between the St. Louis County, Duluth, and then the IRRB. And that's kind of spurred a very localized boom in that area. And there's obviously people that are extremely enthusiastic about shooting up there. And of course we are as well. I mean, obviously beyond, all the hardworking and talented people, there's the scenery up there, which is, so different than what you get down here.
Mm-hmm.
So locally within Duluth, I mean, we have, the Upper Midwest Film Office with Sherry Marsick and Ricky McManus, obviously, that are, working their butts off to grow the industry up there. And Catalyst has sparked a lot of interest from
Catalyst is a festival, kind of
Yep.
more digital on the more digital side. TV.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, but it's also, it's got a lot of people interested in the region. A lot of people from outside of Minnesota have came to go to Catalyst and would have never possibly stepped foot in Duluth before. So that's a great thing too. All these steps moving forward to help grow the industry that we love.
Have you seen any persistent challenges in promoting Minnesota as a viable space? Obviously, we have winter, which some people can't get that anywhere else, right?
Yeah.
But people are like, we can't film here year round. Is that a problem? Like anything come to mind?
Not necessarily. No, I think that our 4 distinct seasons, combined with, we have 3 geographic biomes in the state that help kind of diversify all of our locations, are much more of a strength than a weakness. So there hasn't been much, but obviously we get a lot of phone calls from outside of the state saying, do you have snow in November or February? And often it's like, well, we should, depending on how the climate is, reacting.
Mm.
But no, our seasonality is definitely a strength. And particularly when, people do think of Minnesota, obviously it is the cold Scandinavian, BS that is, we've worked hard at kind of changing that narrative. But we still get the same amount of, interest in the summer months that we do in the winter months.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. No, I agree. I feel like the cold gets too much press.
Yeah.
I was part of a documentary years ago about the Vikings, about the football team.
Yeah.
And they chose Minnesota specifically because of the seasons,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because elsewhere in the country, you don't get that change, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of boring. So you can go film in Southern California, but it all looks the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you think about something like even like the certain iconic shots of downtown Minneapolis in different seasons. Minneapolis can look entirely different in the winter at night than it does in the summer.
Totally.
Everything. And it creates an atmosphere and everything. And you can find that all over the state, obviously, that, you shift from one season to the other and you get a completely different feel. And you're not going to really get that in, like the bayou, or even the desert for that matter.
And fewer things that can kill you.
Exactly. Yeah.
No poisonous snakes.
Nope.
No spiders that can actually do real damage.
No,
Maybe
no.
southern Minnesota, maybe a little
No
bit,
alligators, nothing
Yeah.
like that.
Mhm.
We can get some mountain lions up north, but they typically keep to themselves.
Yeah. Pretty safe state.
Yeah.
All told, yeah. What other kind of tangential benefits do you think that we offer here outside of like the seasons and a good crew base? Like, and they could be fun things too. Like our food scene here is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, that's the first thing that I actually went to was our food scene. I think that we have a absolutely remarkable and very localized food scene here, where you can stay in one area of the city, or St. Paul for that matter, or even up in Duluth, where you can get 8 different kinds of foods: Indian, Thai, Chinese, and all of a sudden you get like a soul bowl or something like that, and be able to walk to it or bike to it and everything. Obviously, we have a great craft beer scene and the distillery scene and everything. I would say that our diversity of locations are very much not stringent upon the seasons. A lot of that also has to do with our food, and that goes into the cultural too and everything like that. So there's that. I'd also say things like the Minnesota Historical Society and with historical preservation has done a lot to give the state its character with preserving a number of historical places.
That's a great one.
Yeah. That you can do anything when you go down Summit. Find a mansion that wouldn't be great for a horror film.
Right. Totally.
It'd be very, very easy to do that. What goes into the crew part, we have an extremely blue collar, hardworking, no complaints crew here that likes to work hard, likes the feeling working as a team, that don't have, and I'm not saying you don't have this in Los Angeles or anywhere else. I think that we're
Well,
around the industry.
you do, but half of them are from Minnesota.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. But there's maybe less. There's tamed egos here a little bit. And
Toxic humility is what I call
toxic.
it.
Yeah. Right.
But
yeah.
definitely very humble and hardworking. Yeah.
Very, very humble in our own way, and we like to work hard, I think. And that just helps everyone. I think it helps almost every industry here. It's the reason why we have a very strong, diverse economy.
Yeah. One thing too that I tell everyone, they're always surprised to hear, we have the second most theater seats per capita outside of New York City, right?
Yeah.
So a ridiculous amount of working actors that are all trained, working constantly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Theater, film, commercial, print, what have you, right? Like that's hard to find.
It's awesome. My in-laws were here for the first time over the summer. They're from Montreal, and they had no idea. And when he said per capita the second largest theater scene here, they're like, oh my gosh. So we went to a few plays and they loved it. And that's something that also is obviously not well known outside of maybe the Midwest, but it's something we should definitely celebrate.
Well, I was telling you before, this is part of the reason why I'm starting this podcast is like, we got to start talking about this stuff, right? I know the Film Board does a really good job of that, but most of us in the industry or, other artistic industries, like, we'll do our own promotion, but raising the bar as a whole, I think we need to do more of that and do a better job, because what we have going on here feels like we're on the cusp of like really breaking out in a significant way.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, and I think that, it goes to the point to your toxic humility. I think that there's a way to do it where us Minnesotans can't feel like, oh, we're talking too much about ourselves. We better go back and put the logs on the fire, and I think that we can celebrate the work that's being done, be motivated to work harder in the future to sustain the industry here. The one thing that is a definite is there's nothing slowing down this industry besides the strikes, obviously. But once those are settled, the media is only growing, between streaming and still theatrical, hopefully will continue to kind of evolve. I have a lot of hope for that. Because a movie lover, I want to go to see things in the theater.
It's not dead.
Yeah, it's not dead, not at all.
Some people predicted it would be with streaming, but it turns out they're wrong.
No, they're absolutely wrong. And we can thank a lot of very strong proponents to put some of these films that are coming out in theaters now are becoming events, but beyond that, small art house theaters that are throwing out independent films and films from France and Iceland and Latin America and everything like that. They also are so vital to keeping the art form alive and having the people see it the way they should.
And we talked about it briefly with Catalyst, but we have a bunch of amazing festivals in the area too, right? Yeah. Any of those jump to mind that you want to show?
Obviously, the Minneapolis St. Paul International Film Festival. That I remember my first time going to that when I just moved here. I think it was 2009, and being just blown away by the sheer number of films that they had, and the side things they did with panels and having it right down there on St. Anthony, Maine, with some restaurants there. Now obviously it's even bigger, and that's beautiful. Twin Cities Film Fest is doing its thing. They always throw a rocking festival over there.
Fun.
Yeah, it was super fun. Yeah. And now Duluth Superior Film Festival is kind of merged, and it's really cool what they're doing. But then even beyond the festivals, between the Trilon and Parkway and the Film Society now runs Maine, which is amazing. Like, they're able to program and curate the theater experience there.
And that's the theater on St. Anthony, Maine, in Minneapolis.
Yeah. It's awesome. I'm so excited that they are curating the films that are coming in there, because they're going to do everything. They're going to put in Oppenheimer and Barbie and every other big release, but then they're going to put it with something that is like an After Sun or some obscure
Ghanaian,
Talk to Me or anything like that. They'll put in and they'll do their Midnight Mayhem stuff and everything, which is so fun. So that's very exciting.
without breaching any confidentiality, any whispers of anything coming or people knocking on the door, poking around?
Not at the moment. I don't believe. I think that the WGA strike being resolved is a really, really good sign. But obviously the big one is still the SAG strike.
Waiting.
Waiting, exactly. So yeah, nothing. Even if I could breach confidentiality, I don't believe there's anything fresh coming up. I think that we will definitely see some movement by spring, early summer, I would think.
Be honest, do you ever go into Google Analytics on the website and look to see where the traffic is coming from to see if you can be like, hey,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's coming from everywhere though. That's the thing.
All right.
You were getting, from each sides of the coasts.
Mm-hmm.
And we are in Variety Insights now, Illuminate Film and TV and everything. So we see stories that are either set here or could be set here, and people are writing stuff for Minnesota.
Right.
And that the higher the incentive was increased, we're seeing a lot more traffic in that regard. So it's just another thing we should be very proud of and be excited about.
Are there any pieces of advice you could give a either local or domestic or international producer or filmmaker looking to work with the film board? Like,
Yeah. So, I mean, the first thing to do were to email myself or Melody or Jill. We're a small but mighty staff. Depending on your needs, if you're looking for locations, crew, permitting referrals, things like that, you would reach out to me. If you're looking for anything incentive based, Jill and Melody are the ones to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're coming from outside the country and you're looking at Minnesota, obviously the Film Commission is the first stop you'd want to make. But we obviously have great relationships with everybody in the community, so we can help point people in the right direction always.
How early in the process should somebody start that conversation?
Oh, I mean, you'd want to have a script written. You'd probably want to have an idea of what your funding is, whether you've acquired funding or in the process of getting funding.
You want to be taken seriously.
Yeah, right? Exactly. You wouldn't want to, have half a script written without any backers yet. I mean, not that we won't talk to you. Of course we will and everything, but we help work with the industry through an economic part, not so much a grant, where we don't administer a grant. It's an incentive program that basically says you have the dollars, spend them, and then you're going to get a return from that.
It's not a charity.
Yeah, exactly. We're much, even though we're a nonprofit, we operate much more as a state agency. And so I would say, when you have a script written and you have an idea of your funding, then when you're looking for locations, or you have obviously especially a lot of indie filmmakers that are maybe doing their first film that are also producing and are unsure of how the incentive works. Reading up on the incentive is extremely important first. So looking at the guidelines and kind of ticking off the things that have to be done in order to, become eligible for it is just great homework to do, period.
Mm-hmm. And you can't help people find funding, right?
No, we cannot.
Because I know you get questions.
We get questions about that pretty often. I mean, we can, if someone is, looking for a grant, we can point them to the Jerome or McKnight Foundations, local grants that can be done. But, we can't connect them with a major equity investor or a streaming platform or anything like that. That's not something. And we do get those calls often. But I get it. A lot of people who are trying to start off, they are trying to start somewhere. And so it's not that we won't take those calls. It's something that we often can't be the catalyst for.
Yeah, that's not within your charter to do that, right?
Yeah,
but, yeah. You want to be helpful.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. Okay, switching a little bit. Do you have any tools or software or books or anything kind of in your sphere that you rely on that makes your work or life easier that you think we should be made aware of, that we should know about?
I go to my wife for just about everything.
All right.
Yep.
Just clone her and
Yep.
we'll be able to.
Clone her, and everything. The world will be a much better place. No, I learn very well by doing, right? So between running, our accounting software and going through Real Scout and everything like that, I learned by sitting down and spending a lot of time on it and making mistakes and understanding how to, remedy those mistakes and things like that. There's a master production guide book that I have in my office that, I'll go to when I get a question about something that I don't know. And that helps a lot.
So it kind of defines things within film production.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because I'm not a filmmaker. So there's a lot of questions that can come to me sometimes where I'm like, I don't know that, but I can look it up, or I can try to learn. And then that obviously makes me better at my job.
What's the difference between a production coordinator and a UPM?
Well,
I don't even know.
UPM says unit production manager, right? So,
right.
So if you're a unit production manager, do you handle only a number of units, or does a production coordinator who on the tipping scale is actually higher?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know, because they're often interchangeable. I'll see
yeah.
people with the same title doing different. I think it depends on the studio level. Obviously, there's a hierarchy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And usually they'll have both of those, including a couple above and a couple below. At my level, it's usually just one person kind of handling that stuff.
Yeah.
And I've seen it both ways. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious, like on a major series,
Mm-hmm.
how that works when you have people, when you have multiple, you have second units, and things like that, and how the hierarchy works. I really don't. I should know. I should.
No, that's
that.
why I asked you, because I've asked a lot of people that, and they're like, I don't know.
Yeah,
depends.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm sure one of my board members would know that question. So I'm gonna run that by one of them.
On our next podcast, I'll ask you that again.
Yeah, right, yeah. Hopefully, I'll be a man of my word and come back to you.
Yeah, you've done a really good job of like shouting people out that have been doing a good job. Is there anybody else, maybe outside of even the film industry, like any awesome restaurants or musicians or anything that like you feel like deserves a little bit more attention?
Well, I think our music scene here, our venues need to be spirited and congratulated, especially going through the pandemic and keeping, staff on and things like that, between First Avenue and just
the whole Save Our Stages piece came from
Save Our Stages legislation was huge, obviously, and I remember that was something that I was, as a music lover, terrified of. I was like, gosh, I love live music. And we have such great venues here. I went to the State Theater for the first time to see Ray LaMontagne.
Nice.
Last Sunday, and man, gosh, it was such a beautiful experience. So, between our music stages and our theater stages, I want to shout everyone out there in the world to keep that going, who kept that going and continues to foster it.
Yeah, we do a really good job of in-person events here in the state.
Yeah.
A lot of festivals, a lot of plays, a lot of music.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're reserved, but we have a good time.
We do. We have a very good time. Yeah. The one thing I'll say is that Minnesotans need to remember they have hips. Hips move. And so when I'm speaking to people that go to First Ave, like when you have some good soul music there or something that you should move to, please move, because it helps the performer to show that you're into it, and it helps the crowd because we might be a little shy, but once you get moving, I mean, music is made to help you move. So
did you learn that in your time in South America? Because I know that's more hip driven.
I did. The thing is like in Argentina, obviously, tango's the big thing. And what's great is the female is actually the lead in tango. So I do great with that. If it was salsa, I'd be screwed. But tango, I was just like, okay, show me where to go.
Right.
I can do it, yeah.
If we could just learn that lesson elsewhere in our lives.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. I think the world would probably be a better place.
Yes, it would.
Yeah. Where can the viewers and listeners find out more about the film board?
So go to our website, minnesotafilmandtv.org. Obviously, we're on, I think, just about every social channel there is. So on Facebook, Instagram, I don't partake in much of that, but I know we're there. So that, and obviously give us a call if you have any questions. After hearing this podcast, I hope that people will be more open to giving us a call, even if they're curious about other organizations that they could get connected to.
Anything I'm not asking?
You didn't ask me what my favorite film was. I thought maybe you would go that route.
Okay.
As a film guy,
All right. Cut and back to one. Jade, what's your favorite film?
Okay, so you can't have a favorite film if you're a cinephile, right? Is that a rule?
I don't have one.
For me, at least, there's a number of them that I would answer, but the one that I always go to is Shawshank, because it's a film that is moved so slowly, and as it should, because they're set in prison. But for me personally, when I saw it for the first time, I think I was 10, and I grew up in a predominantly African American neighborhood, and so all my friends were and are still African American. I loved how the characters of Andy Dufresne and Red became so close, and nothing about race is even brought up in that film at all. It just is, and possibly because they're in prison. Outside of prison, he's an investment banker, I think, and Red was a young man who made a tragic mistake. Maybe they would have never crossed paths and forged this friendship. But it's such a beautiful film. I think there's not a wrong shot in it. There's not a wrong piece of acting. There's not a wrong piece of direction. So, shout out to Shawshank. It's a classic.
I don't know how you could argue that one.
Yeah. Can you name one? Can you name one for me?
The movie that I keep going back to is has Minnesota ties, but Big Lebowski.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, yep.
I can put that on and watch it at any point in the movie and just be totally enveloped by it. Like the humor there, it's almost like anti-humor in a lot of ways, right? It's like so bleak, but so funny and physical. I mean, it has everything. In it. Yeah.
There's so many iconic scenes in that you could just go through. And I'd have to see it again because I've seen it, I think, twice. And I remember individual parts, but I don't remember the whole as much. But I know that there's multiple scenes in there that are so great that the comedy just like hits you out of nowhere.
I probably quote that movie every day and don't even know it. It's just become ingrained in my lexicon at this point, like it's just, Mattisms, but really it came from the Coens at some point. Yeah. Well, pull the trigger until it goes click.